Silver light exploded from Sarah Whitmore's skin like a star going supernova. The ancient council chamber carved from Montana stone over 3 centuries ago blazed white-hot with power that hadn't been seen in this world for 800 years. Every wolf in the room dropped to their knees, heads bowed, necks exposed in absolute submission. Every wolf except two. Twin Alpha Kings stood flanking her, one on each side. Cade Thornwood to her left, ice and control and deadly precision. Riker Thornwood to her right, fire and fury and barely contained violence. Their eyes burned molten gold wolves rising to the surface as they faced down the traitors who had dared attack their mate. I have this power, Sarah's voice echoed with divine resonance, filling every corner of the chamber. The crescent moon mark on her forehead blazed brilliant silver. The power of the moon goddess herself, the power that would have destroyed you all if I'd chosen violence over justice. The light intensified until it hurt to look at her directly. Sarah stood small and pale and absolutely magnificent. White hair cascaded down her back like moonlight made solid. Her albino skin glowed with otherworldly radiance. And her eyes, those pale blue eyes that had been mocked her entire life, now held the ancient wisdom of the goddess herself. She could feel the weight of every wolf's stare, could sense their shock and awe and fear rippling through the bond that connected all pack members. But most of all, she could feel her mates beside her, Cade's cool control anchoring her, Riker's fierce protection surrounding her. Some of you still doubt me, Sarah continued, her voice carrying absolute authority. Still think an Omega without a shift has no business leading. So let me be clear. She turned to address Era Silverwood, who knelt in silver chains before her face pale with rage and terror. I am Sarah Thornwood, Luna Queen of the Northern Pack, mate to Cade and Riker, Thornwood, moon blessed of the goddess. And this is my judgment. Sarah's gaze swept across the bound conspirators. Ara Silverwood, you are stripped of all rank and title. You are exiled from Northern Pack territory. If you return, you will be executed. The light began to fade, sinking back beneath Sarah's skin. She swayed slightly, the power drain hitting her all at once. Immediately, 2 pairs of strong hands steadied her. Cade's cool touch on her left arm, Riker's warm grip on her right. We've got you, Riker murmured against her ear. Always. Forever, Cade added from her other side. Sarah smiled, exhaustion pulling at her, but her heart full in a way she'd never imagined possible. But this wasn't how her story began. 3 weeks earlier, Sarah Whitmore was still just a broken Omega, waiting for the rejection that would destroy her life. The morning sun filtered through the cheap curtains of Sarah's tiny room in the servant quarters of Blackthorn Pack territory, somewhere in the rain-soaked forests of Western Oregon. She'd been awake for hours, staring at the water-stained ceiling, her stomach twisted into knots. Today was the mating ceremony. Today, Derek Blackthorn, future alpha of this pack, would either claim her as his mate or reject her in front of everyone. Sarah already knew which it would be. She'd known for weeks, ever since she'd turned 20, and the mate bond had snapped into place. That mystical connection that should have been sacred, the moon goddess's greatest gift. Instead, it had become a noose around her neck, because Derek Blackthorn was ashamed of her. Sarah rose from her narrow bed and caught her reflection in the cracked mirror. At 5'2", she barely made a dent in the world. White hair so pale it seemed to glow, kin the color of fresh snow, eyes so light blue they were almost colorless. And the worst part, she couldn't shift. 20 years old and she'd never felt her wolf rise, never experienced the transformation that defined what it meant to be a shifter. The pack healers had declared what everyone already knew: defective. Cursed, the albinism was a sign of something wrong, deep in her genetic code. Sarah pulled on her plainest dress, no point trying to look pretty. Derek had made it clear he found her appearance disturbing. It's not personal, he'd said last week. But I'm going to be alpha. I need a strong mate. Someone who can shift, who can fight, who can give me powerful heirs, you understand? Sarah had understood perfectly. She made her way to the kitchen, where Martha, the head cook, immediately put her to work. Around her, other servants gossiped about the ceremony. Derek's so handsome, one beta sighed. Whoever his mate is, she's the luckiest wolf alive. I heard it's that weird albino girl, another whispered, the one who can't shift. No way, he'd never claim someone like that. Sarah's knife slipped, nearly catching her finger. She focused on breathing, keeping her face neutral. Don't react. Don't give them satisfaction. That's forbidden? Martha's sharp voice cut through the gossip. The moon goddess chooses mates. Back to work, all of you. 5 hours until the ceremony. 5 hours until her life ended. The mating ceremony took place in the pack's central gathering ground, a massive clearing surrounded by towering pines. By the time Sarah arrived escorted by two assigned females, the benches were already filling with wolves. She wore white as tradition demanded, a simple cotton dress that made her pale skin look almost translucent. Her white hair had been braided and coiled at her neck. No jewelry, no adornment. She looked exactly like what she was, a ghost, a mistake, something that shouldn't exist. Derek stood on the platform in formal black, surrounded by his parents and the Council of Elders. He looked like a prince from a fairy tale. Dark hair, strong features, easy confidence. When Sarah appeared, a hush fell over the assembled pack. She could feel their stares like physical weight, could hear the whispers, could sense the pity and disgust and morbid curiosity rolling off them in waves. Head high, she told herself. Don't let them see you break. She walked toward the platform on trembling legs, each step feeling like walking to her execution. When she reached the platform, Derek's father gestured for her to climb up. She took her place across from Derek, close enough to feel the mate bond pulling at her, screaming that this man was hers, chosen by the goddess herself. But Derek wouldn't meet her eyes. Elder Thomas stepped forward. We gather today to witness a sacred bond. The moon goddess, in her infinite wisdom, has chosen mates for Derek Blackthorne and Sarah Whitmore. What the goddess has joined, let no wolf put asunder. The traditional words rang hollow. Derek Blackthorne, do you accept Sarah Whitmore as your mate to bond with under the full moon, to protect and cherish for all your days? This was it, the moment. Derek finally looked at her. His brown eyes held no warmth, no affection, only cold resolution. No. The word fell like a stone into still water. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Elder Thomas blinked. I'm sorry, could you repeat? I said no. Derek's voice grew stronger. He turned to face the crowd. I, Derek Blackthorne, heir and future alpha of this pack, reject Sarah Whitmore as my mate. Sarah felt the bond begin to fray. It was like being torn apart from the inside, like someone reached into her chest and started pulling out vital organs. She bit down on her lip hard enough to taste blood, refusing to cry out. Derek continued. Sarah Whitmore is defective. She cannot shift. She carries the curse of albinism, which marks her as genetically inferior. She would weaken our bloodline, produce weak pups, bring shame to this pack's leadership. Each word was a knife, each accusation a wound. But Sarah didn't fall, didn't beg, didn't collapse in tears. She stood there small and pale and alone, and met Derek's gaze with quiet steel. You're right, she said, her voice soft but clear. Every wolf strained to hear. I can't shift. I am albino. I am different. She paused, letting the words hang in the air. But I am not defective. I am not cursed. And I am not weak. Sarah turned to Elder Thomas. I accept his rejection. The formal words spoken with dignity. The bond shattered completely, and Sarah swayed with the force of it. Pain lanced through her chest, stealing her breath. But she locked her knees, forced herself to remain standing. You will never know what you lost today, Derek Blackthorne, she continued, voice steady despite the agony. But I thank the moon goddess for showing me who you truly are before I bound myself to you forever. Because a mate who values appearance over character, power over loyalty, is no mate at all. He's just a coward in expensive clothing. Shocked silence. Derek's face flushed dark red. You dare, I dare. Sarah held his gaze. Because I have nothing left to lose. You've taken everything. My place in this pack. My future. My dignity in front of everyone I've ever known. The least I can do is speak the truth before I go. She turned to Alpha Blackthorne. I assume you'll want me to leave pack territory immediately? The current Alpha looked uncomfortable. The council will need to deliberate. There's nothing to deliberate, Derek interrupted. She's a rejected Omega with no family and no mate. Pack law is clear. She has 48 hours to leave our territory. Derek, his mother whispered. She has nowhere to go. Not my problem. Derek's voice was cold. She should have thought of that before insulting me in front of the entire pack. Sarah almost laughed. The sheer audacity of him making himself the victim would have been funny if it wasn't so tragic. I'll be gone by morning, she said quietly. She left the platform, then walked through the crowd of staring wolves with her head high and her spine straight. She didn't run, didn't hide her face. Only when she reached her small room did she finally let herself break. Sarah packed her meager belongings into a single worn backpack. 3 changes of clothes, a few items from her parents, the necklace her mother had given her on her 13th birthday, a simple silver chain with a crescent moon pendant. That was it. 20 years of life reduced to one small bag. She'd cried for hours, sobbing into her pillow until she had no tears left. The bond to rejection had left a raw, bleeding wound in her chest. Rejected mates often died within months, unable to bear the pain. But Sarah didn't plan to die. She planned to survive, out of spite if nothing else. A knock on her door. "Who is it, Martha?" Sarah opened the door to find the head cook with a basket covered in cloth. "Figured you hadn't eaten," Martha said, pushing the basket into Sarah's hands. "Roasted chicken bread, some fruit, enough for a few days of travel." Sarah's throat tightened. "You didn't have to." "Hush. What Derek did was shameful. The whole pack knows it." Martha cupped Sarah's pale cheek with one worn hand. "You're stronger than you know, girl. Don't let them make you believe otherwise." After Martha left, Sarah found an envelope in the basket. Inside was money for bus fare to Montana, plus a note in careful handwriting. "The auction is at Thornwood Estate 3 days from now. I've contacted a friend who can get you registered. It's not what any Omega deserves, but it's a chance. Take it. Live. That's the best revenge." Sarah sat on her bed staring at the note. An auction. Being sold like livestock. But Martha was right. It was better than dying. Rock Bottom had a way of clarifying things. Sarah Whitmore had two choices: lay down and die, or stand up and fight for whatever scraps of life she could claim. When she'd looked Derek in the eye and called him a coward, she'd felt a spark of something fierce and wild inside her. Maybe that was her wolf still sleeping, but not gone. Maybe that was just her own stubborn will to survive. Either way, Sarah was done being a victim. She would go to this auction. She would be sold to some pack in Montana. And she would survive whatever came next. Because Derek Blackthorne had been wrong about one thing: she wasn't weak. The bus ride to Montana took 2 days. Sarah sat in the back watching the landscape change from Oregon's rain-soaked forests to Idaho's high desert to Montana's sprawling mountains. She'd never been this far from home before. The other passengers ignored her, made uncomfortable by her appearance. Sarah was used to it. She arrived in the small town of Silverbrook on a cold November evening. The auction was scheduled for the next morning at Thornwood Estate. Sarah found a cheap motel and tried to sleep. Her dreams were fractured, things full of Derek's cruel words and the sensation of the bond being ripped away. She woke before dawn, hollow-eyed and exhausted. The shuttle to Thornwood Estate left at 8. Sarah climbed aboard with a dozen other Omegas, all bound for the same fate. Most were young women, like her, faces resigned. No one spoke. What was there to say? The estate emerged from the morning mist like something out of a dream. A massive lodge built from timber and stone, sprawling across acres of pristine mountain land. Floor-to-ceiling windows reflected the sunrise. Pine forests surrounded the property. In the distance, snow-capped peaks of the Rockies. It was beautiful, breathtaking, and it was where Sarah Whitmore would be sold to the highest bidder. The shuttle pulled up to a service entrance. A stern woman with a clipboard directed the Omegas into a large room converted to a holding area. "Names?" the woman barked. One by one, the Omegas gave their names. When Sarah's turn came, the woman's eyes widened slightly at her appearance but said nothing. "Whitmore, Sarah, registered by Margaret Blackwood on your behalf. You're lot 17. Lot 17. Not a person. A lot number. Sarah took the paper tag and pinned it to her dress. They were herded into another room to wait, seated on benches along the walls. A girl next to Sarah, maybe 18, with red hair and freckles, whispered, "First time," Sarah nodded. "Me too. I'm terrified." The girl's voice shook. "What if no one bids? What if whoever buys us is cruel?" Sarah had no comforting words. Those were valid fears. "All we can do is survive," she said finally, "one day at a time." At precisely 9 o'clock, the auction began. Sarah could hear it through the walls. A male voice calling lot numbers. The murmur of bidders. The sharp crack of a gavel. One by one, Omegas were called out. Some came back quickly, tags marked with new pack assignments. Others were gone longer. Sarah waited. Lot 17 meant she'd be near the end. She tried not to think about what came next. Tried not to imagine the faces of wolves who would evaluate her, decide if she was worth purchasing. Tried not to feel like livestock. But she did feel like livestock. Because that's what this was. Legal, sanctioned by pack law, but fundamentally degrading nonetheless. Lot 17, Sarah Whitmore. Sarah stood on shaking legs. This was it. The next chapter of her life, whatever that might be. She walked through the door into the auction hall, and her entire world changed. Because standing at the back of the room, partially hidden in shadow, but impossible to miss, were two men who made every other wolf in attendance look small and insignificant. Both were tall, easily 6.5 feet. Both had the kind of build that came from serious combat training. Both moved with the fluid grace of apex predators. But what stopped Sarah's heart was their eyes, golden amber, burning with an intensity that stole the breath from her lungs, and both pairs were locked directly on her. The mate bond, which Sarah had thought broken forever, suddenly snapped into place. Not once, but twice. Two golden threads connecting her to these strangers, pulling so hard she nearly stumbled. Twins. She had two mates. And from the way they were looking at her, they knew it too. The auction hall fell away. The rows of seated wolves, the auctioneer's droning voice, all of it became background noise compared to the roaring in Sarah's ears. Two pairs of burning eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that should have terrified her. Instead, she felt the mate bond singing through her veins like electricity, like lightning, like coming home after a lifetime of wandering lost. This wasn't possible. The bond with Derek had been severed. Rejected mates didn't get second chances. Except Sarah could feel the twin golden threads connecting her to these strangers with a force that made Derek's bond seem like a pale shadow. This was real. This was right. This was what the bond was supposed to feel like. The man on the left stepped forward into better light, and Sarah's breath caught. Dark hair swept back from a face carved from granite. Sharp cheekbones, strong jaw, lips pressed into a firm line. His eyes were the color of amber held up to sunlight, and they studied her with intensity that made her skin flush hot. He wore all black expensive clothes that spoke of wealth and power. A silver pin on his collar bore a crest, a wolf's head surrounded by thorns. Everything about him screamed control, discipline, precision. The man on the right moved forward to stand beside his twin. Identical faces, identical builds, identical height and bearing, but not identical energy. Where the first man was ice, and control the second was fire barely contained. His amber eyes burned hotter, more intense. A muscle ticked in his jaw like he was fighting not to shift. His hands were clenched into fists, tendons standing out in his forearms. He looked at her like she was water in a desert, like oxygen after drowning, like salvation itself. Lot 17, the auctioneer repeated, sounding annoyed. Sarah Whitmore, 20 years old. Omega, no shiftability, previous pack Blackthorn, Oregon. The word should have shamed her. Instead, Sarah stood taller, meeting those twin gazes without flinching. Let them see what they were getting. Let them see the defective Omega with white hair and pale skin and a wolf that wouldn't rise. Let them see and let them decide if she was worth the trouble. The auctioneer cleared his throat. Bidding starts at $500. Who'll $10,000? The cold voice came from the man on the left. Every head swiveled toward him in shock. $10,000 for an Omega who couldn't shift was insane. The going rate was usually between $500 and $2,000. The auctioneer blinked. I'm sorry, did you say $10,000? The man repeated, voice cutting through murmurs. For lot 17, final offer. Anyone else want to bid? Silence. Dead shock silence. The auctioneer looked around, clearly hoping someone would challenge the bid. But no one moved, no one dared, because Sarah could feel it now, the sheer, crushing weight of dominance rolling off both men. These weren't just alphas. These were apex predators, the kind who made other alphas bow their heads and submit. Going once, the auctioneer said weakly. Going twice. Sold to Cade Thornwood for $10,000. Thornwood, the estate name. These men owned this place, and now they owned her. Sarah's legs trembled as she walked down the short aisle toward the front. Every wolf she passed stared with shock and envy and confusion. The weird albino Omega had just been purchased for 10 times her worth by two of the most powerful alphas in the Northern Territories. None of it made sense. When Sarah reached the front, the controlled one, Cade, gestured toward a door. This way. His voice sent shivers down her spine, deep and smooth and absolutely commanding. But Sarah had spent the last 3 days deciding she was done being a victim, done letting others dictate her life without question. Where are we going? She asked, proud. Her voice came out steady. Cade's eyes flickered with something that might have been approval. Somewhere private. We have much to discuss. The second twin, the fire to Cade's ice, moved to her other side. Together they flanked her close enough that she could feel heat radiating from their bodies, close enough that their scents wrapped around her like invisible smoke. Pine and winter storms from Cade, clean and sharp and cold. Smoke and spiced wine from his brother, rich and warm and intoxicating. Sarah's head spun with sensory overload. The mate bond pulled at her, screaming at her, to close the distance, to touch them, to claim and be claimed. Her skin felt too tight. Every nerve ending hummed with awareness. They led her through a maze of hallways, moving deeper into the estate. Sarah tried to memorize the route, looking for exits, mapping escape routes in case this turned bad. Finally, they reached a heavy wooden door. Kate opened it, revealing a large office. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked mountain vistas. A massive desk dominated one side. Comfortable leather chairs were arranged near a stone fireplace. It looked more like a CEO's office than anything Sarah had expected. Sit, Kate gestured to one of the chairs. Sarah remained standing. I'd prefer to stand. Both twins went very still. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Then Kate smiled. Actually smiled. It transformed his face from merely handsome to absolutely devastating. Smart, he said. Never give ground unless you choose to. I'm Cade Thornwood, Alpha King of the Northern Pack. He gestured to his twin. This is Riker, my brother, and co-alpha. Alpha Kings, plural, twin alphas who ruled together, sharing power equally. Rare. Incredibly rare. You bought me, Sarah said flatly. Why Riker made a sound low in his throat, almost a growl. You know why? Us, the mate bond, of course. But Sarah had learned the hard way that mate bonds didn't guarantee anything. Derek had been her mate too, and he'd rejected her without hesitation. Mate bonds can be broken, she said quietly, or rejected. I have experience with that. Cade's eyes narrowed. The Blackthorn heir. We heard about the ceremony. What he did was dishonorable. What he did was legal, Sarah countered. Pack law allows rejection if the mate is deemed unfit. And I am unfit. I can't shift. I'm albino. I'm exactly what he called me, defective. No, Riker's voice was rough, fierce. He took a step toward her. You're perfect. You're ours. The goddess doesn't make mistakes. The goddess paired me with Derek Blackthorn, Sarah pointed out. That seems like a mistake to me. Cade moved around the desk, studying her with unsettling eyes. What if she didn't? Sarah blinked. What if Derek Blackthorn was never your true mate? Cade's voice was thoughtful, analytical. What if the bond you felt was simply proximity and hope and desperate wish for connection? True mate bonds are rare, Sarah. 1 in 10,000. Most wolves settle for compatible partners, not destined mates. But the bond, was weak, Cade interrupted. Wasn't it? You felt a pull toward him. Yes. But did it consume you? Did it feel like your soul was tethered to his? Did touching him set your skin on fire? Sarah opened her mouth to say yes, then closed it again. Because he was right. The bond with Derek had been there, but it had been manageable. She'd felt drawn to him, had wanted his approval, but it hadn't been overwhelming, hadn't been all-consuming, not like this. Not like standing between these two alphas and feeling like every cell in her body was screaming at her to close the distance, to touch, to claim and be claimed and merge until she didn't know where she ended, and they began. This, Riker said softly, gesturing between the three of them, this is what a true mate bond feels like. Can you deny it? Sarah swallowed hard. No, I can't deny it. Good. Cade's voice was approving. Then we start from honesty. You are our mate. We are yours. The goddess has chosen and we accept her wisdom. Just like that, Sarah's voice came out sharper than intended. You don't even know me. You saw me for 30 seconds in an auction hall and decided to pay $10,000 for the privilege of owning me. We don't own you, Riker growled. Mates don't own each other. They partner. They bond. They build together. Legally, you do own me, Sarah countered. I was purchased. I'm registered to this pack now to you specifically. That's how Omega auctions work. Cade leaned against his desk, crossing his arms. Then we'll change the law. You're not our servant, Sarah. You're our mate, our equal, our future queen. The word hit like a physical blow. Queen. Sarah almost laughed. 3 days ago, she'd been rejected as too defective to stand beside a future alpha. Now twin Alpha Kings were calling her their queen. This is insane, she whispered. Yes, Cade agreed. It is, and yet here we are. Sarah's voice cracked. She cleared her throat, tried again. I need time to think, to process. This is too much, too fast. Riker made a pained sound. The bond will still be there tomorrow, Sarah interrupted. She forced herself to meet both their eyes. I'm not rejecting you. I'm asking for time to make an informed decision rather than being swept away by biology and instinct. The twins exchanged a long look, some wordless communication passing between them. Finally, Cade nodded. Fair. We'll give you time, but not alone. What? You'll stay here, Riker said. In the estate. We have guest quarters, private, comfortable. You can rest, eat, recover from your journey. And when you're ready, we'll talk. It wasn't exactly what Sarah had asked for, but it was more consideration than she'd expected. Okay, she said quietly. Thank you. Cade pressed a button on his desk, and within moments a middle-aged woman appeared. She had kind eyes and gray streaking through her brown hair. This is Margaret, Cade said. She manages the household. She'll show you to your quarters and make sure you have everything you need. Margaret smiled warmly. Come with me, dear. Let's get you settled. Sarah followed her out, acutely aware of twin golden gazes tracking her every movement. The mate bond pulled at her with every step of physical ache in her chest. But she needed this. Needed space to think without their overwhelming presence clouding her judgment. Because mate bond or not, Destiny or not Sarah Whitmore was done making decisions based on what others expected of her. This time she would choose her own path. Even if that path led straight back into the arms of two Alpha Kings. The guest quarters were nicer than anywhere Sarah had ever stayed. A large bedroom with a massive four-poster bed piled high with soft blankets. A private bathroom with a shower that had actual water pressure. Windows overlooking the forest and mountains. Margaret showed her where everything was promised to send up food and left Sarah alone. Sarah sank onto the bed, her mind racing. True mates, twin alphas, queen. The words kept echoing through her head, impossible and overwhelming and terrifying. She'd come to Montana expecting to be sold to some pack as a servant, expected to spend her life cleaning and cooking and staying invisible. Instead, she'd walked into an auction hall and straight into a destiny she'd never imagined. Food arrived on a silver tray, not servant fare, but a proper meal: roasted chicken, fresh vegetables, warm bread, fruit. Sarah ate mechanically, tasting nothing. What did she actually want? For 20 years, Sarah had wanted to belong, to be accepted, to find a place where her differences didn't mark her as less than. Derek had promised that and then ripped it away. Could she trust these alphas not to do the same? Could she risk her heart again? But even as doubt circled, Sarah couldn't deny what she felt. The mate bond wasn't just physical attraction, it was deeper. A soul-level recognition that these men were hers and she was theirs. A knock on the door interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Come in, she called. Riker entered and Sarah's breath caught. Without Cade's ice-cold control to balance him, Riker's intensity was almost overwhelming. He filled the doorway, all coiled muscle and barely restrained power. Sorry, he said, voice rough. I know you asked for time, but I couldn't. He stopped, jaw clenching. The bond is driving me insane. I needed to see you, to know you're okay. Sarah's heart squeezed. She could feel his distress through the bond, a low-level anxiety that mirrored her own. I'm okay, she said softly. Just processing. Riker nodded but didn't leave. He stood there, clearly fighting some internal battle. You can come in, Sarah heard herself say. Sit. Talk to me. Help me understand. Relief flashed across his face. He entered, closing the door but leaving it unlocked. No trapping her, no claiming space without permission. He sat in the chair across from the bed, maintaining distance. What do you want to know? He asked. Everything. But Sarah started with the most pressing question. Why didn't you reject me? You saw what I am. Albino can't shift, rejected by my previous pack as defective. Why would you want that? Riker's eyes flashed gold. Because you're beautiful, because you're brave, because you stood in that auction hall with your head high despite everything you've been through, because the goddess chose you for us and she doesn't make mistakes. Cade said that too. But how do you know? 800 years, Riker said quietly. That's how long we've waited for you, and Sarah's eyes widened. You're ancient, yeah. We were born in the 13th century during the height of the Pack Wars. We've lived through empires rising and falling, watched the world change beyond recognition. And in all that time, in 8 centuries of searching, we never found our mate. He leaned forward intense. Until you walked through that door. Until I smelled honey and wildflowers and knew instantly that our search was over. But I'm perfect, Riker interrupted fiercely. You're exactly what we've been waiting for. Your albinism isn't a curse, Sarah. It's a mark. The moon-blessed were always pale. They're always different. They were the goddess's chosen vessels for her power. The moon-blessed are extinct, Sarah said. Everyone knows that. Everyone thinks that, Riker corrected. But what if they're wrong? Before Sarah could respond, another knock. Cade entered, eyes immediately finding his brother. I thought we agreed to give her space, Cade said, but his tone wasn't angry, more amused. I tried, Riker muttered. Lasted an hour. Despite everything, Sarah felt a smile tug at her lips. The easy banter between them, the obvious affection, it was nice. Normal in a way that made them seem less intimidating. Cade moved to stand near the window. We owe you an explanation. A full one. about what we are, what this pack is, and what we're offering you. Sarah pulled her legs up onto the bed, wrapping her arms around her knees. I'm listening. And so they told her. About the Northern Pack, one of the oldest and most powerful in North America. About their role as Alpha Kings, maintaining peace between multiple territories. About the estate that housed not just wolves but humans under their protection, a safe haven for those fleeing abuse. About 800 years of duty and responsibility and loneliness. We've had relationships, Kate said frankly, over the centuries, but nothing ever felt right. No one ever felt like home. Until you, Riker added. Until we scented you in that hall and everything clicked into place. Sarah processed this. What are you asking from me? Time, Kate said, to get to know us, to let the bond develop naturally. And then if you choose to accept us as your mates, to bond permanently under the full moon, to stand beside us as Luna Queen. And if I don't choose that, Sarah asked quietly, both alphas went very still. Then we'll release you, Kate said, though the words clearly cost him. Give you money, resources, help you start over wherever you want. We won't force you, Sarah. Mate bond or not, you have to choose us freely. The fact that they were willing to let her go meant more than anything else they could have said. I have conditions, Sarah said slowly. Riker leaned forward. Name them. Well, first, no permanent marking without my explicit consent. I've heard about claiming bites. I need to be sure before we take that step. Both alphas nodded. Second, I wanted in writing that I'm free to leave if this doesn't work. No pack law technicalities. If I choose to go, you let me go. Agreed, Kate said immediately. Third, Sarah took a breath. I want to learn. Combat training, pack politics, everything I'd need to know to actually function in this world. I'm tired of being helpless. Riker's smile was fierce and approving. We can do that. And fourth, Sarah met both their eyes. Never use me to hurt others. I won't be a weapon or a pawn or a trophy. If we do this, I'm a partner, an equal. Or it doesn't happen at all. Silence. Then Cade Rose moved to his brother. Together they knelt before Sarah, identical positions of respect. We swear it, Cade said formally. On our honor as Alpha Kings, on our lives, on the moon goddess herself. You will be our partner, our equal, our queen in truth, not just title. These conditions are accepted. The formality of it, the weight of the vow, made Sarah's throat tight. These weren't just pretty words. These were sacred oaths. Okay, she whispered. Then let's trip. The relief that washed through the bond from both alphas was almost overwhelming. We should discuss logistics, Cade said, rising. You'll need clothes, personal items. Margaret can take you shopping tomorrow. I don't have money, Sarah started. You're our mate, Riker interrupted. Everything we have is yours. It would take time to wrap her head around that. Sarah had been poor her entire life. There's also the matter of your heat, Cade said clinically. Sarah's face flamed. Omegas went into heat cycles roughly every 3 months, periods of intense biological need that were nearly impossible to manage alone. When's your next one? Riker asked, voice gone rough. 2 weeks, Sarah admitted, maybe 3. So soon. Riker closed his eyes. That's going to be difficult. Because the mate bond will make it worse, Kate explained. Your body will crave us specifically. It'll be painful for all 3 of us if we don't address it. You mean if we don't have sex, Sarah said bluntly. Yes. Sarah's heart raced. She'd never been with anyone, had been saving herself for her mate, and then Derek had rejected her before anything could happen. I'm a virgin, she blurted out. Both alphas went very still. Of course you are, Kate said softly. You're 20, and you were saving yourself for your mate. That's a gift, an honor. We would never take that lightly. We'd make it good for you, Riker added, voice almost reverent. Make sure you were ready, that you wanted it. Your pleasure would come first. Always. The heat in his eyes made Sarah's skin flush. She could feel the want pouring off both of them through the bond, carefully controlled, but undeniably there. They wanted her, truly wanted her. I should rest, Sarah's voice came out breathy. It's been a long day. Understanding flickered across both faces. They rose, moving toward the door. If you need anything, Kate said, anything at all, our rooms are down the hall, 3rd and 4th doors on the left. We won't push, Riker added, but we're here, whenever you're ready. After they left, Sarah lay back on the bed, her mind spinning. 2 weeks until her heat. 2 weeks to decide if she was brave enough to trust these alphas with her body, her heart, her future. 2 weeks to figure out if Sarah Whitmore, the rejected Omega that no one wanted, could actually become a queen. The next 5 days passed in a blur of new experiences. Margaret took Sarah shopping, and Sarah found herself with an entirely new wardrobe. Not servant clothes, but real outfits, things that actually fit and look nice. Dresses and pants and soft sweaters, shoes that didn't hurt, a proper winter coat. She met pack members, warriors who treated her with respect despite her inability to shift, healers who examined her and declared her healthy, elders who welcomed her warmly, and she spent time with Kate and Riker. Meals together where they talked about everything and nothing. Walks through the forest where they showed her the packlands. Evenings in the library reading while a fire crackled. They were courting her, Sarah realized, properly courting her, giving her time to know them as people rather than just mates. Cade was brilliant and strategic, a born leader who could negotiate peace treaties and manage complex pack politics with ease. But he also had a dry sense of humor that caught Sarah off guard, and he played piano beautifully, his fingers moving over the keys with the same precision he brought to everything else. Riker was fierce and protective, quick to anger, but also quick to laugh. He trained with the warriors every morning, and he'd started teaching Sarah basic self-defense. His patience with her clumsy attempts was touching, and his praise when she finally landed a hit made her glow. The mate bond grew stronger each day. Sarah found herself hyper-aware of where they were at all times, could feel their emotions like whispers in the back of her mind, and the attraction grew too, undeniable and increasingly difficult to ignore. The way Cade's eyes tracked her when she entered a room, the way Riker's hand would linger when he helped her up from a fall during training, the way both of them scented the air when she was near, breathing her in like oxygen itself. Sarah wanted them, wanted to know what it felt like to be touched with desire instead of disgust, wanted to claim and be claimed to complete the bond that pulled at her constantly. But fear held her back. Fear of being vulnerable, of giving someone that much power over her, only to have them reject her again. On the sixth day, everything changed. Sarah woke in the pre-dawn darkness with her skin on fire. For a moment, she was disoriented, confused about why she felt like she was burning alive. Then realization crashed over her. Her heat, 2 weeks early, triggered by proximity to her mates and the strength of their bond. Sarah curled into a ball, whimpering as the first wave of need crashed through her. This was worse than any previous heat, magnified by the mate bond until it was almost unbearable. She needed. The door crashed open. Cade and Riker stood there, eyes glowing gold, clearly woken by her distress through the bond. Sarah, Cade's voice was strained. Your heat. I know, she gasped. Another wave hit, and she cried out, her body cramping with need. Riker made a pained sound. We should go. Leave you. No. The word tore from Sarah's throat. Please, don't go. I need... She couldn't finish the sentence, but they knew. They knew what she needed. Cade moved first, approaching the bed slowly like she was a wild thing that might bolt. Are you sure we agreed no pressure? And this is... I'm sure, Sarah interrupted. I choose this. I choose you. Both of you. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Not both, Cade said gently. Not your first time. That's too much. Let me... He glanced at his brother. I'll be gentle with her. Teach her what her body can feel. And then later, when she's ready... Later she can have us both, Riker finished roughly. Okay, I'll stay. I'll help. But you lead. Sarah's mind was too fogged with heat to fully process the logistics. All she knew was that they were here, they were staying, and the terrible ache inside her was about to be soothed. Cade sat on the edge of the bed. May I touch you? Even now, drowning in heat, he asked permission. Something in Sarah's chest cracked open. Yes, she breathed. Please, yes. His hand cupped her face, cool against her fevered skin. The touch sent electricity singing through her nerves. His thumb brushed her cheekbone, tender and reverent. You're beautiful, he murmured. So damn beautiful. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she tilted her face up toward his, he closed the distance. The first brush of his lips was soft, gentle. A question more than a demand. Sarah answered by pressing closer, her hands fisting in his shirt. The kiss deepened. Cade's tongue swept into her mouth, tasting her, claiming her. He kissed like he did everything else, with absolute focus and devastating skill. When he finally pulled back, Sarah was panting. Her skin felt too tight, every nerve ending, screaming for more. Riker, Cade said without looking away from her. Help me with her clothes. 4 hands working together. Sarah's nightgown was peeled away carefully, exposing inch after inch of pale skin. She should have felt self-conscious, but the way they looked at her, like she was precious, perfect, everything they had ever wanted, burned away any shame. Gorgeous, Riker breathed. His hand skimmed her sides, not sexual yet, but grounding. Every inch of you. Cade's gaze dragged down her body and back up molten gold. I'm going to make you feel so good, little mate. But you have to tell me if anything is too much. Can you do that? Sarah nodded, then found her voice. Yes, I'll tell you. Good girl. The praise sent heat pooling low in her belly. Cade's hands traced her collarbone, the curve of her breast, the dip of her waist, exploring, learning her body's map. When his thumb brushed her nipple, Sarah gasped. The sensation was electric pleasure shooting straight between her legs. Sensitive, Cade noted. That's good, that's very good. He lowered his head, and Sarah's back arched off the bed as his mouth closed over her breast. Hot and wet and perfect, his tongue circling the peaked flesh before he sucked gently. Sarah's hands flew to his hair, holding him there, pleasure building with each pull of his mouth. That's it. Riker's voice came from her other side. Let us hear you. Don't hold back. Cade switched to her other breast, giving it the same devoted attention. His hand slid lower over her stomach, her hip, her thigh, getting closer to where she needed him most, but not quite touching. Teasing, building anticipation. Please, Sarah heard to herself beg. Please, I know what you need. Cade's hand slid between her thighs, and they both groaned when he felt how wet she was. Oh, Sarah, all this for us. For you, she gasped. His finger circled her entrance, gathering moisture, then slid up to the bundle of nerves at her apex. The first touch made Sarah cry out, her hips jerking. Easy, Cade soothed. I've got you, just feel. He stroked her with maddening patience, building pressure slowly. His mouth returned to her breast while his fingers worked magic between her legs. The pleasure built and built, spiraling higher. Sarah had touched herself before, had brought herself to orgasm in the lonely dark of her room. But this was nothing like that. This was overwhelming, all-consuming, like being caught in a riptide with no choice but to surrender. You're close, Cade murmured against her skin. I can feel it. Let go, Sarah. Come for me. His finger pressed down just right, and Sarah shattered. The orgasm crashed through her in waves, stealing her breath, her vision whiting out. She was vaguely aware of crying out of Cade's hands still moving, drawing out every last pulse of pleasure. When she could finally think again, breathe again, she found both alphas watching her with naked hunger. Beautiful, Riker said hoarsely. You're so beautiful when you come. But the heat wasn't satisfied. Already Sarah could feel it building again, demanding more, demanding everything. She reached for Cade. Inside, please. I need you inside. Cade's control wavered. She could see it in the way his eyes flashed gold in the tightness of his jaw. Are you sure? His voice was strained. Once we do this, the bond, I'm sure. Sarah pulled him down to her. I choose you, Cade. I choose this. Make me yours. Something broke in him. He kissed her hard, possessive, while his hands made quick work of his clothes. When he settled between her thighs, Sarah's breath caught. He was big, thick, and hard and intimidating. For a moment, fear flickered through her. Cade felt it through the bond. He gentled, immediately pressing kisses to her face, her throat. We'll go slow, he promised. I'll make it good. Trust me. I trust you, Sarah whispered. He reached down, positioning himself at her entrance. The first press made Sarah tense. Breathe, he coached. Relax for me, little mate. Your body knows what to do. Slowly, carefully, he pushed inside. The stretch was intense, almost painful, her virgin body struggling to accommodate him. That's it. Cade's voice was tight with the effort of going slow. Taking me so well. Just a little more. Inch by inch, he worked himself deeper. Sarah focused on breathing, on relaxing, on the feel of Riker's hand gripping hers, grounding her. Finally, Cade was fully seated. He held perfectly still, giving her time to adjust. How do you feel? He asked. Sarah took inventory. The fullness was overwhelming, the stretch bordering on uncomfortable. But underneath that was a rightness, a completion, like a puzzle piece finally clicking into place. Full, she managed. It's a lot. It'll get better, he promised. Just breathe through it. He started to move. Small, careful thrusts that gradually deepened as Sarah's body relaxed around him. The discomfort faded, replaced by building pleasure as nerve endings she didn't know she had came alive. Oh! Sarah gasped as he hit something inside her that sent sparks through her entire system. There, right there. Found it. Cade's smile was fierce. He angled his hips, hitting that spot with each thrust, and Sarah's moans filled the room. The pleasure built impossibly high. Cade's hand found her center, his thumb circling, while he moved inside her. The dual sensation was too much, too perfect. Come for me, he commanded. Come on my cock, Sarah. Let me feel you. The orgasm hit like lightning, so intense Sarah screamed. Her body clenched around him, and Cade groaned, his rhythm faltering. Going to mark you, he gritted out. Going to make you mine. Is that okay? Say yes, Sarah. Tell me I can claim you. Yes, she sobbed, lost in pleasure. Yes, claim me. Make me yours. Cade's eyes flashed pure gold. He struck deep one final time, and Sarah felt him pulse inside her. At the same moment, his teeth sank into the juncture of her neck and shoulder. The claiming bite. Power exploded through the bond, golden and bright, and absolutely binding. Sarah felt Cade's soul twining with hers, felt the mate bond snap into place with devastating finality. His. She was his. Forever. When he finally lifted his head, blood stained his lips. His eyes still glowed pure gold. Mine, he growled, voice gone rough and primal. My mate, my queen. He licked the wound and Sarah gasped as his saliva sealed the bite. She could feel it transforming, the torn flesh knitting together but leaving a permanent scar. A mark that would never fade. Physical proof that she belonged to Cade Thornwood. Let me see. Riker's voice was hoarse. He moved closer and Sarah turned her head to give him a better view. The claiming mark was intricate, beautiful in a savage way. The imprint of Cade's teeth formed a crescent, but around it, thorns had begun to appear, dark lines etching themselves into her pale skin like living tattoo ink. The Thornwood crest, Riker breathed. It's marking her. Cade had withdrawn from Sarah's body and she whimpered at the loss. The heat still simmered under her skin, temporarily banked, but not extinguished. Easy, Cade soothed, gathering her against his chest. I know, the first claiming doesn't fully satisfy a heat. You'll need, his eyes flicked to his brother. You'll need more. Sarah's gaze followed his. Riker stood at the edge of the bed, every muscle in his body taut with restraint. His eyes burned like twin flames and she could feel his hunger through the bond. Riker, she whispered. He shuddered. You should rest. You just lost your virginity, took your first claiming. You, Sarah interrupted. I need you. The heat was rising again, demanding, insistent. Her body recognized that one mate had claimed her, but the other hadn't, and it wouldn't be satisfied until both bonds were complete. Riker's control shattered. He moved with supernatural speed, crossing the distance in a blur. His mouth crashed down on Sarah's, hungry and demanding. Where Cade had been patient teaching Riker was pure need. His kiss tasted of smoke and spiced wine, intoxicating. His hands gripped her hips, pulling her against him, and Sarah could feel his hardness pressing against her. Need you, he growled against her lips. Needed you since I first scented you. Drove me insane watching Cade have you first. Then take me, Sarah gasped. I'm yours. Take what's yours. Riker made a sound low in his throat, almost a snarl. He flipped her over onto her stomach, and Sarah's breath caught at the show of strength, the easy way he manhandled her body. This okay, his voice was rough. Tell me if it's too much. It's perfect, Sarah managed. Don't stop. She felt him position himself behind her, one hand gripping her hip, the other guiding himself to her entrance. The angle was different from before, deeper somehow. When he pushed inside with one hard thrust, Sarah cried out. He was bigger than Cade, or maybe the angle made it feel that way. The stretch was almost too much, bordering on pain. But Riker froze immediately. Fuck. Did I hurt you? No, Sarah panted. Just give me a second. Cade's hand appeared, threading through her white hair, stroking soothingly. Breathe through it. Your body will adjust. Sarah focused on breathing, on relaxing, and gradually the overwhelming fullness became bearable. Then pleasurable. Okay, she whispered. You can move. Riker didn't need to be told twice. He pulled almost all the way out and thrust back in hard and deep. The pace he set was nothing like Cade's controlled rhythm. This was raw, primal, two wolves claiming their mate. So tight, Riker groaned. So perfect, taking me so well. Each thrust drove deeper, hit harder. Sarah's fingers clawed at the sheets, pleasure and intensity building until she couldn't think, couldn't breathe, could only feel. Cade's hands slipped beneath her, finding her center. His fingers worked in time with Riker's thrusts, and the dual sensation sent Sarah spiraling. That's it, Cade murmured. Come for him. Show him how beautiful you are when you fall apart. The orgasm hit like a freight train. Sarah screamed into the pillow, her body clenching around Riker, and he roared his own release. His teeth sank into the other side of her neck, mirroring Cade's mark. The second claiming bite sent another surge of power through the bond. Sarah felt Riker's soul joining the connection, felt the three of them becoming something more than separate beings. A triad, a unit. Three souls bound so tightly they'd never fully separate again. When Riker finally released her, Sarah collapsed boneless onto the bed. She could barely move, wrung out and satisfied in ways she'd never imagined possible. Both sides of her neck throbbed with the claiming marks. Both Alpha's ascents covered her skin. And the mate bond sang through her veins like music, like coming home, like everything finally being right. Sleep, Kate commanded softly. We'll watch over you. Safe between her mates, claimed and protected and cherished. Sarah slept. The next 2 weeks transformed Sarah's life. Every morning she trained with Riker and the Pack Warriors. Combat basics, how to throw a punch, how to defend against an attack, how to use an opponent's size against them. Again, Riker commanded after she'd been thrown to the mat for the 10th time. Sarah gritted her teeth and rose. Her opponent, a beta warrior named James, looked apologetic. I don't want to hurt her, James said to Riker. You won't, Riker replied. She's tougher than she looks. Again. They circled each other. James lunged, and this time Sarah was ready. She sidestepped, used his momentum against him, and somehow miraculously managed to flip him onto his back. The entire training ground went silent. Sarah stared down at James in shock. How did I? Riker's grin was fierce and proud. You felt it coming, sensed his intention before he moved. He turned to address the gathered warriors. This is why she's Luna. She has gifts we're only beginning to understand. After training, Sarah met with Cade for politics and pack law. She learned the complex hierarchy of pack structure, the treaties between territories, the delicate balance of power. You're a natural, Cade said after she successfully navigated a mock negotiation. You see connections others miss. Read people well. I've spent my whole life being invisible, Sarah admitted. You learn to watch, to listen when no one sees you. And evenings were for her mates. Sometimes they talked, sharing stories of their lives. Other evenings were physical. Sarah had lost her virginity, but she was far from experienced, and the twins took evident joy in teaching her. Cade preferred slow and methodical, taking her apart with precision until she was begging. Riker liked it rough and fast, all-consuming passion and primal need. But both of them always made sure she came first. Made sure her pleasure was prioritized. Made sure she felt cherished. Through it all, the bond deepened. Sarah learned to navigate the emotional connection to feel them without being overwhelmed. She also discovered something else, something unexpected. Sarah could sense emotions from other wolves too. Not as clearly as her mates, but enough to know when someone was lying, when they were afraid, when they were angry. You're moon-blessed, Elder Marcus told her during a consultation. I'm certain of it now. The ancient bloodline carries gifts we've forgotten. Empathy, foresight, emotional manipulation. Your albinism isn't a curse. It's a mark of divine favor. But the moon-blessed are extinct, Sarah protested. We thought so, Marcus agreed. But perhaps the goddess simply hid her chosen ones. Waited for the right time to reveal them again. He smiled kindly. You were rejected for being different. But your difference is what makes you special. Sarah wanted to believe him, wanted to think that all the years of being called defective, cursed wrong, had actually been preparing her for this. On the evening before the full moon ceremony, where she'd be formally recognized as Luna, Sarah stood in front of the mirror in her quarters. The woman looking back barely resembled the broken Omega who'd stood in an auction hall 3 weeks ago. She wore a dress of midnight blue that made her pale skin glow. Her white hair cascaded down her back. The claiming marks on both sides of her neck were visible, proud declarations of her mated status. She looked like a Luna, like a queen. But inside, fear churned. Tomorrow she'd stand before the entire Northern Pack. What if they rejected her? What if they thought she was unworthy? A knock interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Come in, she called. Both twins entered, devastating in formal black attire. They stopped when they saw her, and the hunger that flared in their eyes was gratifying. Gorgeous, Riker breathed. Stunning, Kate agreed. He moved closer, his hand cupping her face. But troubled. I can feel your fear. What's wrong? Sarah bit her lip. Tomorrow. What if they don't accept me? Then they answer to us, Riker said flatly. You're our mate. That's not negotiable. But what if I'm not good enough? The words burst out. What if I can't be the Luna you need? I'm not strong. I can't shift. Stop, Cade commanded. Sarah, look at me. She met his amber eyes. You've been here 3 weeks. In that time, you've learned combat moves that take most wolves months to master. You've studied pack law and politics and impressed every elder. You've shown kindness to the Omega's strength to the warriors and wisdom to the council. You're already the Luna we need, Riker added. You just don't see it yet. We need to show you, Cade said. His eyes darkened. Show you how perfect you are. Both of us, Riker's voice went rough. Together. You're ready now, aren't you? Sarah's breath caught. They'd claimed her separately, but never together. Yes, she whispered, I'm ready. They descended on her together. 4 hands removing her dress with practiced efficiency. 2 mouths tasting her skin. Sarah's head spun with sensation. They laid her on the bed and Cade settled between her thighs while Riker moved to her head. Open for me, Riker commanded, and Sarah's lips parted. He guided himself into her mouth and Sarah moaned at the taste of him. At the same moment, Cade's tongue found her center and her back arched off the bed. She couldn't think, couldn't breathe, could only feel as they played her body like an instrument. That's it, Riker groaned. So perfect. The orgasm built, and when it finally crashed over her, Sarah saw stars. Riker withdrew and she gasped for air. Beautiful, Cade murmured. But we're not done. They switched positions. Cade lifted her easily, positioning her on top of him, while Riker moved behind her. Both of us, Cade confirmed, at the same time. You can take it. Cade entered first and Sarah sank down onto him with a moan. The fullness was already overwhelming, and then she felt Riker positioning himself behind her. Relax, Riker soothed. We've got you. Trust us. Sarah did trust them. Completely. Riker pushed forward slowly, carefully, and Sarah gasped at the intensity. It was too much she couldn't possibly, but her body opened for them, accommodating, accepting. Within moments, both alphas were fully seated, and Sarah felt impossibly full, stretched beyond what should be possible. Breathe, Cade commanded. Just breathe through it. They held still, giving her time to adjust. Through the bonded in, Sarah could feel their restraint, the effort it took not to move. Okay, she finally gasped. You can move. They moved together, finding a rhythm. When Cade thrust up, Riker pulled back. When Riker pushed forward, Cade withdrew. The alternating sensation was indescribable. Sarah was lost, drowning in sensation. The bond blazed between all 3 of them, emotions and pleasure, feeding back and forth until she couldn't tell where she ended and they began. Come for us, Cade growled. Come with both your mates inside you. The orgasm that hit was beyond anything Sarah had experienced before. Her vision whited out, her body convulsing, and she felt both alphas follow her over the edge. Through the bond, something shifted, clicked into place. The triple bond, complete at last. Power flooded through the connection so intense that Sarah's skin began to glow. Faint silver light emanated from her, growing brighter with each passing second. What? Riker started. The moon blessed. Cade breathed. She's manifesting. The light grew until it filled the room, pure and clean and absolutely divine. Sarah could feel the power coursing through her, ancient and new at the same time. And in that moment she understood. She wasn't defective, never had been. The inability to shift the albinism, the differences, they were all signs of something greater. The moon goddess had chosen her, marked her from birth, hidden her until the right time, the right mates, the right moment. The light faded slowly, sinking back beneath Sarah's skin. She sagged between her mates, utterly spent. That was, she couldn't find words. Proof, Cade finished. Undeniable proof of what you are. Tomorrow, Riker said fiercely, when you stand before the pack, everyone will see. Everyone will know. You're not just our mate. You're the moon goddess's chosen. And anyone who dares question that will answer to us. Sarah smiled, exhaustion pulling at her. But for the first time since Derek's rejection, she felt no doubt. She was exactly where she was supposed to be. The next morning, Sarah woke to urgent voices. Arrived an hour ago, Margaret was saying, demanding an audience. I tried to turn him away, but he insists pack law requires you to hear him. Sarah sat up, instantly alert. Through the bond, she felt her mate's anger, controlled but simmering. Who's here? She asked. Cade's expression was grim. Derek Blackthorne. He's demanding to see you. Ice flooded Sarah's veins. White claims you were promised to him first, Riker snarled. Says we stole what was rightfully his. Wants you returned to his pack. The audacity was breathtaking. He rejected me. Publicly. In front of everyone. We know, Cade said, but he's technically within his rights to make the claim. Pack law requires we at least hear him out before the council. Sarah's hands clenched into fists. She'd been so focused on moving forward that she hadn't considered Derek might come after her. Then let's hear what he has to say, she said, voice cold. Let him stand before me and explain why he thinks he deserves anything after what he did. Riker's smile was feral. That's our queen. An hour later, Sarah stood in the council chambers flanked by her mates. The room was packed with elders, witnesses, pack members, curious about the drama. And at the center stood Derek Blackthorne. He looked exactly as Sarah remembered. Handsome, arrogant, utterly sure of himself. But now when she looked at him, she felt nothing. No pain, no longing, no trace of the bond that had once connected them. Just cold contempt. Sarah, Derek's voice was smooth, calculated. You're looking well. Cut the pleasantries. Cade's voice was ice. State your business. Derek's jaw tightened. Very well, I'm here to formally contest this mating. Sarah Whitmore was my mate first chosen by the goddess. I made an error in judgment when I rejected her influenced by prejudice and poor counsel. He turned to address the council. I wish to revoke my rejection and reclaim her as my rightful mate. Shocked murmurs rippled through the chamber. Sarah felt Riker tense beside her, felt murder rising through the bond. But she placed a hand on his arm, calming. Let me, she murmured. She stepped forward, and every eye turned to her. You rejected me, Sarah said clearly. Not privately, not quietly, but in front of 200 witnesses. You called me defective, cursed, unworthy of standing beside an alpha. You said I would weaken your bloodline and bring shame to your pack's leadership. Derek had the grace to look uncomfortable. I was wrong. Yes, you were, Sarah interrupted, but not about my supposed defects. You were wrong about what matters. Wrong about what makes someone worthy. Wrong about me. She held up her hand and silver light began to glow beneath her skin. Gasps echoed through the chamber. I am moon-blessed, Sarah declared. The goddess marked me from birth, chose me for a purpose you couldn't comprehend. You saw my differences as weaknesses. My true mates see them as gifts. The light grew brighter, filling the chamber with radiance. You had your chance, Derek Blackthorne. You chose to throw it away. Now you see what you lost and want it back. But you don't get second chances when you publicly humiliate and reject your mate. Sarah's voice rang with authority she'd never possessed before. I, Sarah Whitmore, mate to Cade and Riker Thornwood, reject your claim. You had me and you discarded me. Now I have mates who value me, who cherish me, who see my worth. And I will never ever go back to someone who saw me as less than. The light faded, leaving stunned silence in its wake. Elder Marcus rose. The Luna has spoken. Her rejection of your claim is absolute. Derek Blackthorne, you are hereby ordered to leave Northern Pact territory and never return. Derek's face flushed with rage. You can't, this isn't... It's done, Cade's voice cut through his sputtering. You're lucky we're letting you leave alive. This isn't over, Derek snarled, but even as he spoke, warriors were escorting him from the chamber. Sarah watched him go, feeling nothing but relief. That chapter of her life was closed, forever. But as Derek disappeared through the doors, Sarah caught sight of another face in the crowd. A woman with silver hair and ice-blue eyes watching with calculation. The woman met Sarah's gaze and smiled, cold, predatory. Through the bond, Sarah felt a spike of alarm from Cade. That's Ara Silverwood, he murmured, one of our senior advisors. Sarah's newly awakened senses screamed warning. Whatever Ara was planning, it wasn't good. 2 days after Derek's dismissal, Sarah stood in the training grounds watching Riker demonstrate techniques to young warriors. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and approaching winter. Through the bond, she felt Cade's presence in his office, deep in negotiations with a neighboring pack. The connection had become second nature now. Sarah's sensing ability had grown stronger too. She could feel the warriors respect their genuine acceptance of her as Luna. But underneath the surface calm, something nagged at her, a wrongness she couldn't quite identify. Luna? Elder Marcus approached, his weathered face troubled. Might I have a word? Sarah followed him away from the training grounds to a quiet corner near the forest edge. The old wolf's anxiety rippled through her senses. What's wrong? She asked. Marcus glanced around, ensuring privacy. I don't want to alarm you without proof, but I've noticed strange activity. Ira Silverwood has been meeting with wolves from the southern pack. Late-night conversations, coded messages. Sarah's stomach clenched. She'd felt Ara's hostility since Derek's hearing. What do you think she's planning? I don't know, Marcus admitted, but Ara wanted her daughter to mate with the Alpha Kings. Your presence destroyed that ambition. A woman scorned can be dangerous, especially one with Ara's resources. Before Sarah could respond, her phone buzzed. An unknown number, but the message made her blood run cold. Help, Omega's in danger. Old Warehouse District. Please come alone. They'll kill them if they see Alphas. Sarah's first instinct was to call Cade and Riker, but the message was clear: Alphas would trigger violence, and her sensing ability could verify if this was real. Marcus, tell my mates I went to investigate a distress call, Old Warehouse District. If I'm not back in an hour, send everyone. Luna, you shouldn't. But Sarah was already running. Her training kicked in, her small body moving with speed she'd developed over weeks of practice. The bond would keep her connected to her mates. She wasn't truly alone. The warehouse district was abandoned remnants of the town's industrial past. Sarah approached cautiously, her senses stretched to their limit. She felt them. Three Omegas, their fear sharp and genuine. This wasn't a trap, there really were wolves in danger. Sarah entered the largest warehouse through a broken side door. Sunlight filtered through holes in the roof. "Hello," she called. "I'm here to help." Movement in the shadows, but not from the Omegas. Ara Silverwood stepped into the light, flanked by four large males. Southern pack based on their sense. "Thank you for coming, Luna." Ara's voice dripped false sweetness. So predictable, so eager to help. Sarah's heart hammered. Through the bond, she felt Cade and Riker's alarm. They knew something was wrong. "Where are the Omegas?" Sarah demanded. "Safe at my estate," Ara said. "The distress call was necessary bait. I needed you alone." The southern wolves moved to flank Sarah, cutting off escape routes. But Sarah didn't run. She stood tall, meeting Ara's gaze. "Why, because you're a mistake." Ara spat false sweetness, evaporating. "An albino Omega who can't shift has no business being Luna Queen. My daughter is powerful, beautiful, pure-blooded. She should stand beside the Alpha Kings." "They chose me," Sarah said quietly. "The goddess chose me. The goddess makes mistakes." Ara gestured to the southern wolves. "Alpha Garrett here agrees. He's been looking for leverage against the Thornwood twins for years. You're that leverage." One of the males, Garrett, apparently stepped forward. He was massive, scarred, radiating barely controlled violence. "We're going to perform an ancient ritual," Garrett explained. "Break the mate bond. Once you're unclaimed, the Thornwood Kings will be weakened, vulnerable, and the Northern Pack will fall." Sarah's mind raced. The bond blazed with her mate's fury. They were coming, but they were miles away. She had maybe 10 minutes. She needed to stall, and she needed to trust the gifts she'd been developing. "You think breaking a mate bond is that simple?" Sarah asked. "The moon-blessed bond is sacred, unbreakable." "You're not really moon-blessed," Ara scoffed. "That's propaganda." Sarah smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Want to test that theory?" She closed her eyes, reaching for her sensing ability. Not just to feel emotions, but to manipulate them. She'd never tried it deliberately, but desperation sharpened her focus. She found the nearest southern wolf's fear. Every warrior had fear buried deep, fear of failure, of weakness, of death. Sarah grabbed that thread and pulled. The wolf's eyes went wide. "They're coming," he gasped. "I can feel them. Hundreds of wolves. We're surrounded." "There's no one there," Garrett snarled. But Sarah had already moved to the second wolf, flooding him with paranoia. "He's lying," the second wolf pointed at Garrett. "This is a trap. He's going to sacrifice us." "What are you doing?" Ara's voice rose in alarm. The third and fourth wolves turned on each other, fear and paranoia spreading like wildfire. Sarah's power worked better than she'd hoped. These males were already on edge, already distrustful. She'd simply amplified what was there. In the chaos, Sarah ran. She made it to the warehouse door before Garrett caught her, his massive hand closing around her arm. Pain shot through her shoulder and she cried out. Through the bond, she felt her mate's answering roar of fury. "Nice trick," Garrett growled. "But it ends now." He raised his other hand claws, extending, aimed at her throat. Silver light exploded from Sarah's skin. Not the gentle glow from before. This was pure, searing power that sent Garrett flying backward with a howl of pain. The moon-blessed mark on Sarah's forehead blazed white-hot, a crescent moon that had been invisible until this moment. "I am moon-blessed," Sarah's voice echoed with otherworldly resonance. "Chosen by the goddess herself, and you dare lay hands on me?" The four southern wolves dropped to their knees, compelled by divine authority. Even Aara stumbled back, genuine fear crossing her face. The warehouse doors crashed open. Cade and Riker entered like avenging angels, eyes pure gold wolves at the surface. Behind them, 24 Northern Pack warriors filled the space. "Sarah," Cade's voice was tight with barely controlled rage. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," Sarah said. The silver light faded, leaving her exhausted but standing. "They tried to break our bond." Riker's growl shook the building. He moved toward Garrett with lethal intent. "Wait," Sarah commanded. Both her mates stopped, immediately responding to the authority in her voice. "This requires a trial. Public justice, not private vengeance." Cade's eyes flashed with pride even through his fury. "As you wish, my queen." The council chamber was packed to capacity 2 hours later. Every elder, every warrior, every Omega who could fit had crammed into the space. Ara and the four southern wolves knelt in the center, bound with silver chains. The metal burned their skin where it touched. Sarah stood on the raised platform, flanked by her mates. She wore formal attire, now deep midnight blue that made her pale skin luminous. The claiming marks on her neck were visible to all, and the crescent moon on her forehead, though no longer glowing, had left a faint silver mark that caught the light. This was the scene from the cold open, the moment everything had been leading to. Elder Marcus began the proceedings. We are here to pass judgment on Ara Silverwood and Alpha Garrett Shadowfang, along with his pack members for crimes against our Luna and conspiracy against the Northern Pack. The evidence? Cade's voice was cold as winter. He gestured and Margaret stepped forward with a folder. We found these in Ara's quarters, Margaret said, disappointment evident. Correspondence with Southern Pack. Plans to kidnap the Luna. Research into bond-breaking rituals. Financial records showing payments for hired rogues. Gasps rippled through the assembled wolves. Ara had been a respected advisor for decades. This betrayal cut deep. Ara Silverwood, Sarah's voice rang clear. Do you deny these charges? Ara lifted her chin, defiant even now. I don't deny them, but I don't regret them either. You are unworthy to be Luna, an Omega who cannot shift, who has no strength, no power. I have this power, Sarah interrupted. She raised her hand and silver light danced across her palm. The power of the moon goddess herself, the power that sent your hired wolves running in terror, the power that would have destroyed you all if I'd chosen violence over justice. The light intensified, filling the chamber. Wolves dropped to their knees again, unable to stand in the face of divine energy. But I didn't choose violence, Sarah continued, letting the light fade, because true strength isn't about domination. It's about protection. It's about building rather than destroying. It's about proving your worth through actions, not bloodline. She turned to address the full assembly. Some of you still doubt me, still think an Omega without a shift has no business leading. So let me be clear. Sarah's voice carried absolute authority, now the same resonance that had compelled Garrett's wolves to submit. I was rejected by a pack that valued appearance over character. I was sold at auction like property. I came here expecting to be a servant at best, but the moon goddess had other plans. She gestured to her mates. She gave me 2 Alpha Kings who see my worth. She gave me power I'm only beginning to understand. She gave me a pack willing to accept me despite my differences. And she gave me the strength to stand here today and pass judgment on those who conspired against us all. Sarah's gaze swept the room, meeting every eye. I am Sarah Thornwood, Luna Queen of the Northern Pack, mate to Cade and Riker Thornwood, whom blessed of the goddess. And this is my judgment. She turned back to the kneeling conspirators. Ara Silverwood, you are stripped of all rank and title. You are exiled from Northern Pack territory. If you return, you will be executed. Your daughter, who had no knowledge of your crimes, will be allowed to stay if she chooses, but she will no longer receive preferential treatment. Ara's face went white. For a wolf, exile was worse than death. Cut off from pack, from community, forced to live as a rogue. Alpha Garrett Shadowfang, Sarah continued, you and your wolves are hereby banished from all allied territories. Your attack on a Luna Queen is an act of war, but I choose mercy over bloodshed. Leave now and never return. Stay and face the consequences. Garrett's scarred face twisted with rage, but he was outnumbered and outmatched. This isn't over, he snarled. Yeah, Cade stepped forward, voice deadly soft. It is. You laid hands on our mate. You tried to break our bond. You conspired to destroy our pack. The only reason you're alive is because Sarah, our queen, our moon-blessed mate, chose to spare you. Don't test her mercy twice. Riker moved to Cade's other side. You have 1 hour to leave our territory. After that, we hunt. The southern wolves were dragged out by warriors. Ayara followed, her head held high, despite her disgrace, refusing to show weakness even in defeat. When they were gone, the chamber erupted in howls of approval. The pack had witnessed their Luna's strength, her wisdom, her power. Any remaining doubts evaporated. Sarah swayed slightly, exhaustion hitting. Immediately, both mates were there supporting her. You were magnificent, Riker murmured against her ear. A true queen, Cade agreed, but you need rest. That much power expenditure takes a toll. Sarah nodded, too tired to argue. As they led her from the chamber, she caught Elder Marcus's eye. The old wolf bowed deeply, respect and admiration clear on his weathered face. She'd done it, proven herself not just as mate to Alpha Kings, but as Luna in her own right. 6 months later, Sarah stood on the balcony of the master suite, her hands resting on the swell of her belly. Spring had transformed the pack lands into a riot of color wildflowers blooming across the meadows. New leaves bright green on the trees, the mountains still capped with snow, but the valleys bursting with life. Inside, her 2 heartbeats fluttered in rhythm with her own. Twins just like their fathers. The pack healers said it was unprecedented for a human-wolf pairing to produce multiples, but nothing about Sarah's story had been ordinary. Strong arms wrapped around her from behind. Cade's cool scent enveloped her as he rested his chin on top of her head. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "Everything," Sarah admitted. "How different life is now." Riker appeared on her other side, his warm hand covering hers on her belly. "Feeling them. They're active today," Sarah smiled. "I think they're practicing fighting already." Both alphas chuckled. Through the bond, Sarah felt their joy, their pride, their fierce protectiveness toward both her and their unborn children. The past 6 months had been transformative for the entire pack. Sarah had implemented new policies protecting Omegas, ensuring no one could be sold or forced into servitude. She'd established education programs teaching young wolves about consent and equality. She'd opened the pack's borders to refugees from abusive situations, making Thornwood Estate a true sanctuary. The pack had thrived under the triple leadership. Cade handled politics and alliances with his strategic brilliance. Riker commanded the warriors in defense with his tactical expertise. And Sarah became the heart of the pack, the one wolves came to with problems, the one who mediated disputes and built community. "Look," Riker pointed toward the training grounds below. A group of young Omegas sparred with Beta warriors learning self-defense. Among them was Elena Ara's daughter who'd chosen to stay and had become one of Sarah's staunchest supporters. Near the forest edge, the rescued Omegas from various trafficking operations worked in the gardens, their laughter carrying on the spring breeze. They'd found safety, purpose, community, everything Sarah had once desperately wanted. "Derek's pack merged into ours completely last month," Cade said. "The transition is going smoothly. Most of them are relieved to be under different leadership." After Derek's public humiliation, his pack had voted to remove him as heir. His father had reached out to form an alliance with the Northern Pack. Derek himself had been exiled, his whereabouts unknown and irrelevant. "I don't even think about him anymore," Sarah said quietly. "Isn't that strange? He was my whole world once, and now it's like it never existed." "Because it wasn't real," Riker said. "Not like this." He gestured to the marks on Sarah's neck, to the bond blazing between the three of them. "This is what the goddess intended. Derek was just a stop on your journey." "A painful stop," Sarah corrected. But Riker was right. Without Derek's rejection, she never would have come to Montana, never would have found her true mates, never would have discovered her moon-blessed heritage. Sometimes the worst moments lead to the greatest destinies. A knock on the door. Margaret entered with her usual efficiency, carrying a folder. "Sorry to interrupt," she said with a warm smile, "but you asked me to bring the final numbers for the Omega Sanctuary expansion." Sarah took the folder, reviewing the figures. The sanctuary had grown from housing 12 wolves to over 50 in just 6 months. They needed more space, more resources. "Approved," she said, signing the authorization. "Use whatever funds necessary. This is a priority." After Margaret left, Cade pulled Sarah closer. "You've changed the pack more in 6 months than most Lunas do in decades." "We've changed it," Sarah corrected. "I couldn't do any of this without you both." "Partners," Riker agreed. "Equals, just like we promised." The sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. Sarah leaned back against Cade's chest. Riker's hand still warm on her belly, and felt complete. She'd found her purpose, her family, her home. "Tell me the story again," she said softly. "How you knew I was yours." Cade pressed a kiss to her temple. "We walked into that auction hall and there you were, small and pale and absolutely magnificent. Your white hair caught the light. Your eyes held more strength than any alpha I'd ever met. And your scent. Honey and wildflowers," Riker finished. "The mate bond snapped into place so hard I nearly shifted right there." "We'd waited 800 years, Cade continued, "through wars and plagues and centuries of loneliness. We'd almost given up hope. And then the goddess sent us you." "A rejected Omega," Sarah murmured. "Defective," cursed Yun. "Perfect," both mates said in unison. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, happy tears this time. "I love you both so much." "We love you too," Cade said. "Forever." "Forever," Riker echoed. The twins inside her belly kicked hard as if agreeing. Sarah laughed through her tears, one hand on her stomach, surrounded by her mate's warmth and strength. Below them, the pack gathered for the evening meal. Wolves of all ranks mingling freely, alphas and betas and omegas, warriors and healers, and teachers. A true community built on respect rather than fear. "Our children will grow up in this," Sarah said. "They'll never know what it's like to be rejected for being different. They'll be celebrated for their unique gifts." "Because you made it so," Cade said. "You took your pain and transformed it into protection for others. That's what makes you a true queen. The full moon rose over the mountains, silver and perfect. Sarah felt its pull, felt the goddess's presence like a benediction. She thought about the girl she'd been 3 weeks ago, broken, rejected, sold at auction, with no hope for the future. That girl had been terrified of everything, of rejection, of pain, of never being enough. But that girl had also been brave. She'd stood before Derek with her head high. She'd chosen to survive when dying would have been easier. She'd taken a chance on two Alpha Kings who offered her the world. And now she stood as Luna Queen Moonblessed, carrying the next generation of the Thornwood bloodline. The fairy tale was real, Sarah whispered. What? Riker asked. Sarah smiled. Nothing, just realizing that sometimes the stories are true. The rejected girl does become a queen. The monster does turn out to be a prince, and forever really does exist. She turned in Cade's arms, reaching up to cup both her mates' faces. Thank you for choosing me, for seeing me, for loving me exactly as I am. Thank you, Cade replied, for being brave enough to let us. For being strong enough to stand beside us, Riker added. For being you, they finished together. The twins kicked again, and all three of them laughed. New life, new hope, new beginnings. Sarah Whitmore had been rejected, broken, discarded. Sarah Thornwood was cherished, powerful, eternal. And her story, their story, was just beginning. The moon blessed them all with silver light as they stood together, three souls bound so tightly they'd never be separated. Not by distance, not by time, not even by death. Forever.